I've had writers come to me and say, my agent won't get me to talk to the people that venue. I'm like, well, why are you relying on your agent? You have to do it. You have to go find the people to talk to. You have to foster those relationships. And it's something I didn't do early in my career because I wasn't good at it.
All right. This is the Story Series podcast where we tell the stories behind the people. Guy, Toubes, welcome.
Thank you. This is hilarious.
This is hilarious.
It's already fun.
we were cracking up right before this, and we still have the giggles. So just for people,
we're going to continue having the giggles all the way through.
I hope so. So just for people who don't know, I like to read a brief introduction.
Okay.
So Guy,
Can I edit it while you're reading?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. This is
just
gonna
like
be awesome.
our working relationship.
Yeah, this is it.
Edit me anytime. You are a prolific screenwriter in
No
children's
notes so far.
in children's television, having put words in the mouths of everything from penguins, flamingos, to trucks and transformers. Just to name a few of your credits, you're the creator of The Stinky Dirty Show, executive producer of Hello Jack, The Kindness Show, co-creator of a little show we made together called Cocomelon Lane, and most recently, executive producer on the upcoming Messi and the Giants, inspired by soccer legend Lionel Messi. So once again, welcome.
Thank you. And fantastic introduction. But you mispronounced Lionel Messi. It's
Is it?
Lionel.
Lionel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And
on the show, his name is Leo.
Leo.
Yes. You
Lionel
use that
Messi.
Latin.
Yeah.
It's Lionel.
Oh, Lionel.
But for some reason, all his friends call him Leo.
Leo.
I don't understand why that is, but that's what it is.
Well, great. Well, now that we have that.
Otherwise, no notes. Okay. Very well done. It's beautifully written. I knew I liked you.
Yes. So I want to get into all that, but I like to start with origin stories just as a way for everybody to get to know you a little bit better. So if you could, where did you grow up?
I grew up in many places. I was born in Israel, and when I was 6 months old, moved to New York. Grew up in Westchester County, in various places in Westchester County. So I'm a suburb kid, suburban New York, and went to NYU where I met my wife, Jody.
Yes.
Went to film school there and didn't come out here until 93, 94.
Right. But just going back for a second.
Yeah, sure.
When you were growing up, were you creatively inclined? Did you have any sort of the artistic writing bug?
That's all I wanted to do. I knew what I want. I knew I wanted to make TV because I thought TV was the greatest thing. Like I would sit and watch TV all day long to the point where my mom had to limit the amount of television.
So you were the first kid who got screen time imposed?
Absolutely. Was I the first kid? I don't know. She's like 2 hours a day. And I was like, that's not enough.
And were there any shows in particular?
Everything. I mean, my earliest memories, interesting that we work in preschool TV, is my earliest memory was the block on PBS, which was Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, and Electric Company. And I was glued to the television for those things. And I really loved Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was like my friend. He was like the person I needed to talk to or needed to see or have a connection with.
I loved Mr. Rogers too as a kid, and thinking back, I really loved all those repeatable elements.
Yeah.
That he would go into the closet, putting on his sweater, switching his shoes, all those little things, in shows that we make now, there's repeatable elements that we call out. Back then, it was just those simple things, but I looked forward. I needed that, right?
Yeah. And there's something to that. I mean, obviously, we took a lot of that into Cocomelon Lane, and that's all from the heart. It's not just a format that we've imitated. It's all like something that was part of our growing up and part of the way we felt when we saw that show. We felt seen. We felt like part of that atmosphere.
Cut to high school when you're trying to figure out where you're going to go.
Yeah.
How do you decide on your university? Because at this point, writing or filmmaking is for you.
Film. I knew in eighth grade, I knew I wanted to go to NYU film school. My father had gone to NYU studying business, years back. And I was like, well, what are the schools? And there were 5 schools, I think, that were good for film school. There was a book in our library. And it was like, here are the top 5 schools to go to for film school. And I just looked at that list and I'm like, the top of the list was USC. And then second was NYU. And I was like, well, I'll apply to all of them, but NYU seems like the place to go.
Yeah.
And Martin Scorsese, who I had started to admire, had gone to NYU, and I was like, well, that's the guy. He's cool. He's, he's not just making movies, he's making films,
I think too, Oliver Stone was a student in his class,
and
right?
Oliver
Spike
Stone.
Lee eventually
Yep,
taught
all of
there.
them.
So, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like the USC of the East Coast in a way, right?
And there was, at the time, it was like there was the indie movement happening, and it was much more cool to have gone to NYU. Even though what I was really influenced by was Lucas and Spielberg and all of those great movies.
But there's just the movement that everybody kind of gets influenced by, and whatever's
you
hot.
want to be cool when you're that age.
Of course you do. I think still
Yeah,
some of us still try. So you go there, you apply, you get in.
Yes.
And what is that experience like? What are you learning about yourself at that school?
I think what I learned about myself in college in general is just, I'm really a capable person. You just set a goal in front of me and I can do it. The concept of collaboration was big at NYU. Everybody was put into groups. Everybody critiqued each other's work, but it didn't feel like anything new or different to me. That felt like, oh, doesn't everybody do this? It wasn't until later that I realized I probably learned a lot of my collaboration skills by going through that. And it wasn't until, like I was saying before, I had a teacher, my first screenwriting class, where I had a teacher whose name is Bennett Sims, who influenced me a lot. And I started to understand, okay, well, a screenplay is where it all really begins. That's really where I want to have the kind of influence on the kinds of stories I want to make.
And you got a little further into that craft of
I remember I wrote, he was an interesting guy. He sort of said at the beginning of the class that nobody's really good at this. Very few people are talented. He doesn't expect any of us to be very good at it. But it was a short screenplay class, like writing the short screenplay. And he's like, whatever you do, don't adapt something. Come up with something new and original. Don't adapt something. So the first thing I did was picked up a book that I loved and I adapted that into a short screenplay. I don't know if I forgot or if I just didn't care what he was saying. It doesn't seem like something of mine to do. So I did. And then I handed it in and in the next class, he was like, I just want to say one of the students here went completely against my wishes and completely against what I said to do, and adapted a short story. And it's really great. I'm glad he did. And so he gave me these great notes, and it was something that I actually thought I was going to produce as my short film, as my student thesis at NYU.
Why did you gravitate towards that book, and what was it? Or what short story?
It was called The Conversion of the Jews. It was a Philip Roth short story.
Okay, Philip Roth.
And it had affected me because it was about Judaism, something I was always interested in, and about being Jewish in America. And it was told from a kid's point of view at Temple, because he hated Temple and he just wanted to create chaos. And that was something that all my friends did when they went to Hebrew school. And the kid creates this chaos to the point where I think he's on the roof of the temple and threatening to jump off, and he's just creating chaos amongst all the adults. And it's funny to him, but it's also at the same time making all these comments or doing commentary on the idea of religion in general. So it was just all packed up into this cute little funny story, but said something in a very short amount of time. And I was like, I could do this. I could dramatize this. I could make it work.
That's fascinating that you just kind of unconsciously went against your professor's wish, but somehow ended up standing out and getting recognition for that.
And this guy gave me, I think, something that still sticks. It didn't stick with me at the time, but gave me the advice that I think sticks with me the most and makes me feel sort of good about it. He's like, the one thing you don't have, but you showed a sign of with what you just did, is arrogance. And I was like, why would I want arrogance? It's like, no, you want arrogance. Part of what you need to do is have that concept of what you're doing is right. what you feel about what you're doing is the right thing to do, because that's all you have once everybody is giving notes on it. That's all you have is like what originally made you feel great about doing this. You need to have arrogance about what you're producing and what you're writing.
Wow.
And I've taken that through everything I've done. You've seen it, where I'll like push back against somebody.
Yeah.
And I might be showing a little arrogance, but it's always in my head like, I'm right about this. I know I'm right, and I'm going to push back until I get what we need to get.
That's that's profound. Let me just say it back to you. So back then, he said something that you don't have but you're showing a sign of is arrogance.
Right.
And he's explaining to you, don't let that die.
Yeah.
Keep that going. Having obviously worked with you for many years closely, like I wouldn't have used that word necessarily. Like, you show an arrogance, guy.
Right.
But
right.
I can see that because you have to speak up when you don't agree with something.
Right.
And you can have an instinct, but if you don't voice that instinct, then it'll die. So you need some sort of arrogance or whatever to feel. And what's the difference between that and confidence? Why do you think you use that word?
They're totally related, but because, and maybe you can relate to this too, I think we're sort of the same personality-wise, but you're a little more outgoing than I am naturally. But I'm an introvert. As a kid, I would sit in the back of the class. I would not talk unless spoken to. And part of, like, that's a good part of me. Like when I sit back and just watch and examine what's happening all around me, I'm very good. I'm very analytical about, how to make things work. But developing the way of talking back to people and having, I think, confidence in your own ideas and pushing for them with other people is part of being arrogant. Like, I think as an introvert, sometimes maybe part of my personality is like, well, they have a right to an opinion just as much as I do. And I don't want to say my opinion is better than their opinion. But that's what arrogance is. It's like, well, my opinion in this case is better than your opinion. And in many cases, as creators of our show, it is better because we came up with that idea, and the whole inspiration for making the story what it is and making the series what it is all up here and in here. And we have to just be arrogant about that idea. Like, your idea is great for another show that you didn't come up with, but for this show that we came up with, that we put all of our heart and soul into, we're going to be arrogant about it and say, no, that's wrong. Your idea is wrong. It's nice of you that you're thinking about it so much, but you really need to know that this is what it actually is.
You got that piece of advice from that kind of very important professor. But as you get closer to graduating, what are you thinking you're going to do?
Oh, you graduate from film school and then you go out and get a job as a director.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't know. And I knew that it was important to have a film as sort of your calling card, make a movie. And the way NYU worked is that you had to like produce and come up with the funds for your own movies. And I didn't have that. And so I went to school with a lot of rich kids, and they did. And so a lot of people got to make their movie, and they were kind of crappy movies. And I didn't get to make the movie I wanted to make. So I worked on a lot of other people's movies, and then I was just sort of like, I wonder what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? And it was a little bit of a rude awakening. I went back. I went back home. I taught high school. There was at Mamaroneck High School, there was a TV studio, and I was a teacher there. They had a morning announcements show that they did like a news show, and I was the executive producer of that show with the high school kids for a couple of years. And then I was writing with a friend, and writing spec TV scripts. And then something we did got some attention, and I came out here and we pursued that.
What was that? You came out that must have been some attention to get you to move to relocate.
I felt like it was a good thing to relocate here too. And I had been told, like, a lot of advice was like, you're not going to get any traction unless you actually go to LA. You're not going to get any kind of, and a lot of friends from film school had moved here.
And so what was that script then that got you some attention?
So we wrote a Larry Sanders show spec script.
Nice.
And it got some attention, and then, but the main thing is it got us a meeting, interestingly, at Sony Pictures with Tony Danza's company, because they were doing a show called George. It was George Foreman sitcom.
Is this pre-grill?
Yeah, it was. There might have been a grill. I don't know. The grill wasn't as big a deal,
Right.
but it was about him. It was sort of autobiographical. Him and his 7 kids, and his wife was played by Cheryl Lee Ralph. Actually,
Yeah.
it was cool, and we got to actually go on the set and watch a bunch of times, and we were assigned to write a script, and then the show got canceled.
And was that your first professional script?
It was our first professional outline that never got to script because the show got canceled, and then we were in LA.
And that was Tony Danza's company.
It was Tony Danza's
George,
company,
about
yeah.
George Foreman.
Yes.
Wow. But you made it. That was,
Yeah, right.
You went Hollywood at
We
that
made
point.
it. Oh no, we didn't make it.
Well, that's a good lesson, right? Your first script, almost script.
I feel like that lesson just happens over and over and over again.
You can learn it, but you'll relearn it throughout
Yes.
your whole career, right?
You never made it.
And how did you take that? Were you excited? Were you?
I was excited to get it.
Yeah.
And then very disappointed when it didn't, we couldn't follow through with it. And then the writing partner I worked with at the time, he and I broke up, and that sort of ruined any momentum that we had as a writing team.
Because you couldn't really use that sample because it wasn't
Couldn't use the
only
sample,
yours.
Didn't even have, couldn't even say, oh, we worked on a show and it got canceled. Had to start over with new specs, and at the time there really was a staffing season for prime time, and that season had ended, and so I had to start over again, or I felt like I had to start over again.
Yeah, yeah. And what did you do? What were you trying to? How were you trying to orient yourself at that point?
I had another friend who had graduated from NYU who started his own company in LA. And he had some really great connections. He had a little money, and he opened some offices. He said, you can stay in this office and come up with stuff with us, and we'll go out and pitch ideas to places. And I did that for a little while. Did some really weird stuff. Like we did at MCA Universal at the time, we did their first CD-ROM interactive journey, and it was about B.B. King.
Okay.
So we basically created the script for this interactive journey. So you had to create different versions of if you go here, you'll have this scene happen. And if you go here, you'll have this, or you'll hear this song. And one of the things we got to do there was we got to ride the bus with B.B. King and do interviews with him. So that was a cool experience.
Wow.
But ultimately what happened with that company is they wanted to they were looking for ways to use tax incentives from Malaysia. There was some opportunity to do production in Malaysia that would be really cheap. And we just came up with ideas what could we do? What's public domain project that we could just say, and we want to produce it in Malaysia. And the idea that we came up with, public domain, was, Jungle Book. It's, jungles. We could do Jungle Book. It turns out it's not public domain, or it wasn't at the time. We didn't know. It actually was still owned by the Kipling estate. But the idea became, we wrote up a pitch to do a live action version of the Jungle Book and shoot it in Malaysia. And we pitched it with live animals. We actually came up to Canyon Country. We sourced out the animal trainer and used these animals in our pitch.
You brought animals.
We brought a live bear.
I was going to say, I
Yes.
vaguely
You've seen
remember a
pictures,
story
right?
about bringing a bear. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay. Could you tell? Okay. How did that come about? Why the bear of all animals?
Because this was a special bear. I can't remember the bear's name, but the bear was the sweetest 7-foot
I'm
brown
sure.
bear you've ever seen. Like you could put a marshmallow in your mouth and it would take the marshmallow out and eat it. It was like that gentle, but it was still a bear. So
Grizzly man.
and I think the thing we were trying to do as producers was to show we can have a kid and a bear in the same shot. You know, we're going to deliver on, you know, animal and kid
Yeah.
being in the same shot and being in this show together.
And how was that received when you would bring a live bear into
Oh, we only did it once.
once?
We sold the show.
You sold the show. That's the lesson. Always bring a live bear into your pitches.
We sold the show, and then we made it in Costa Rica instead of Malaysia. Turns out it was not all that big a deal. But so the whole reason we were even the whole reason we even came up with the idea for doing the show was these tax breaks in Malaysia, and Costa Rica ended up being where we filmed the show with the show.
Yeah, and it got made. It didn't
Got
that
made
one,
26 episodes.
was that your first? Were you were a creator?
created by? I created by credit with my two collaborators.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you feel on that show? That because it just seems like you had this like you went from this freelance script
Yeah.
that didn't quite make it past outline,
Right.
to now you're
Yeah,
running
so-
a show
Yes. It was like I made it again.
this time for real.
Yeah, but no, not really,
No.
because I still hadn't made it. There was a rude awakening after the 26 episodes. Like, okay, well, now what do I do?
Right.
There wasn't anything waiting for me. Those doors didn't just get opened.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the best at being, I wasn't resourceful. I didn't make connections with people. I didn't do that kind of stuff. I let other people do that kind of stuff.
Right. But did you have a moment where you took in that accomplishment, where you were a
Oh,
working
yeah.
writer on this show?
I did.
Yeah.
I have bottles, in my office, and I remember myself and my co-creators actually opened a bottle of champagne when we got the green light to make the show, and we drank it, and I kept the bottle and I wrote on it, and I have it on my shelf, and I have bottles from now every show that we've done.
Yes.
So-
I remember we've done some together.
Something.
So, but what about your learning curve on that show?
We were in our 20s. We were the dumbest producers ever. And we knew, in film school, they said, don't ever make something with kids or animals. And
That was
we
your
did
first-
something with kids and animals.
But
together.
going back to what your professor said about not adapting, and you
Yeah.
go right to
Yeah,
adapting a short.
There we
that
go.
was just your MO at that time.
Yes. We found out why, because everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And, it was expensive to make. It was just really hard. And it was 320-something guys that were running the show together, having never made a show before, all of a sudden being in charge of everything, and far away in Costa Rica using a foreign cast. And so it was very difficult.
But how was it received when it was all said and done?
It was received fine.
Yeah.
But it was sort of the end. We sold it to Fox Kids. I don't know. Fox Kids was the place for kids TV at the time.
I remember Fox Kids.
Yeah. And so they didn't have anything live action. So there was nothing like that. But I remember the head of Fox Kids was saying it reminded her of when she was growing up, the Disney animal shows that she used to watch. And there was nothing like that. And I think it did pretty well. I just think it was too expensive for them to ever do again. And there were so many issues that we had production-wise.
It's kind of one and done.
And also, I think Fox Kids was sort of on the throes of its own deathbed. That was sort of the end of that era of kids TV, of Saturday morning cartoons. It was a Saturday morning show.
Right. And you mentioned that there was nothing waiting for you at the end of it. So did you feel like you had to start over again, but now you're starting over with more experience, but you're still starting over?
Yeah, totally starting over again. I think what I'm looking at Jody. Jody's over there. My wife is behind the camera. I remember I went back and I think I wrote it like a sitcom spec. And it was just really hard. I got a new agent. And nobody knew who I was, and it wasn't meaningful to them that I had done a kids TV show. And there were opportunities, and Jody had got pregnant. And I remember sitting in the car and I was thinking, well, I could keep pursuing this. And then I was thinking there's actually like some opportunities, but being a writer on a primetime sitcom is like 24-hour-a-day job. And where I was just about to have a baby and I was like, maybe it's not, maybe I don't want to do this. And she was like, yeah, you really should think about that. What is your life going to be like? And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be there 24 hours. Like 5 years ago, that I would have jumped at this opportunity, but now maybe there's another way to go. And so I sort of took a step back, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life and seeing life as more holistic than just my job. And that sort of, I think, changed the trajectory of my life. Thank you, Jody. It changed the whole trajectory of my life and just like how I view anything I do, everything I do. I think I remember saying at one point, like after that point, like I only want to work with people I like. From now on, that's all I'm ever going to do, which
doesn't always happen. You're lucky if you can keep that up.
But sort of like seeing what I do with the bright eyes of like, this is also a quality of life thing.
Yes. Because so when you were doing the Jungle Book, I mean, in some ways, did you feel like you kind of fell into this experience where you weren't necessarily targeting kids TV? You were just open to new writing opportunities, just saying yes to trying different things.
Yes.
And now you were coming to a point in your life where maybe I should just figure things out a little bit more in terms of like what the road ahead looks like.
Yeah.
Because that's what kind of happens when you start a family.
Exactly.
In this process, because you were working with a lot of freelancers, like you said, doing different things, did you decide to really pursue like children's animation?
I met Adam Beechin. You know Adam.
Oh yeah. He's a great writer.
And I met him through another friend of mine, and I don't remember the circumstances where we met, but he had heard that I had written on Jungle Book. And I think he thought the Jungle Book that I wrote on was animated. And he was writing animated shows. He was a comic book writer. He was very enmeshed in the animation world, and making a name for himself and doing quite well. And they gave him his first story editor job at Cartoon Network doing at Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi.
Oh yeah.
Show.
He was the head writer on that?
He was the head writer. I think they had head writers, and those people had moved on, and they brought Adam on as the new head writer. I didn't know anything about it, and he said, "Would you like to write on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And I think he just thought that I had written on Jungle Cubs or some sort of
more animation experience than you had.
I had zero animation experience, and so he must have thought it was kids and family, but it wasn't animation.
Yeah.
So I pitched an idea for Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's a really good show. It's really funny. It's really subversive and weird, and I don't think, there's not a lot of stuff like that. It was an opportunity to just have fun. And I pitched him an idea, and I remember, sort of seeing an animation script, like putting sounds in these little carrots.
Right.
And like, what is that?
A little bit different than how a live action script look. A little bit different. Yeah.
Yes. And then also like really different was because I had written for live action for so long, and in particular for our show, Jungle Book, writing with budget in mind. You still have to write with budget in mind for animation, but
way different.
Saying the world blows up is not something you can't do. The world blows up. You can't just write that into a live action script. So it really opened up a lot of freedom for the things you could put into your scripts.
I want to talk about how Stinky and Dirty came about.
Okay.
And because it was a series of books. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about just the genesis of that show?
I've been writing animation. I had my first story editor job. I really worked with Adam Beechin a lot, who was great. Adam just like fostered this incredible, for me, he was a mentor. Even though I think I'm a month older than him. He did a show for Hasbro and what at the time was the Hub, that the new network at the time that was Hasbro's sort of like, home station.
Right.
And it was based on their Tonka brand. It was called Chuck. Chuck and Friends, and it was talking vehicles basically. So I had done that show, and my agent got me a meeting with Amazon, who was starting up. They were doing, I don't know if you remember at the time, but Amazon was doing like a new wave television where the audience gets to vote on all the pilots and what they're going to make. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, But I had a general meeting with Tara Sorensen. I think I could say Tara's name.
Yeah.
She's sort of changed my life. So I had a general meeting. It was just a general meeting. And on the table at Amazon was this book called I Stink. And I had just done Chuck, and she's like, well, what do you think of this book? And I just like started flipping through the pages, and I was like, oh, well, I would create a world where, there's no people in it because, that sort of complicates things that I had learned on Chuck, like the people, having to deal with where the people are and, like garbage that people created, like that whole concept, like just eliminate that whole concept. And then I would I pointed to a couple of pictures, and I was like, that's a good way to show people, like as silhouettes in the background. It's almost like they don't exist. This is the vehicle world. It's their whole universe. And I don't even remember everything I said, because I thought she was just asking my opinion of the book. And then
you hadn't seen that book before.
You're
just doing this on the fly.
Totally on the fly. And that's not me, by the way. That I'm not that kind or I wasn't at the time. I wasn't the kind of person who would be so easygoing and so able to, but I was so armed because I had just done this show, and I knew all the things that irritated me about that show and how I would do it differently with another vehicle show. So it's just kind of kismet, I guess. And it was a book that Tara had loved, and I think she had read to her kids. And then at the end of the meeting, she's like, okay, well, I want to do this with you. Let's get the papers ready, and we'll get it done. And I was like,
do what?
I was like, get what done? And I was like, really? And so that was it, really. I mean, it took a long time for it to actually get set up, and then we actually made a pilot, and then it actually did go through that crazy Amazon process where people chose it. But I knew it would win because it had trucks, and kids would want talking trucks.
Love you. Even lose. Today, there's a lot of conversations on just kids and vehicles.
Yeah,
if it's a building show, it's like show the vehicles, not necessarily the.
I wouldn't even give myself credit for that. First of all, the show had an incredible look, but the idea that talking cars, and I think that was.
But weren't there multiple books in this series about different vehicles, and you decided to focus on two of them?
That's right.
Why?
Well, because
what are they?
The two books were the books are like I Stink, I'm Brave. I can't remember some of the other ones, but
I'm Dirty. Is that one of them?
Yes, I'm Dirty. Well, there's some more ordinary ones, but the ones that are funniest, like I Stink, is hilarious. Like any kid, I knew kids would love I Stink. It's about a garbage truck who stinks, and he's so proud of himself. He's like, I stink. Like, this is what I do. I pick up all this trash, and he names all the trash, and it's all like that's a great character. And I'm Dirty, also the same thing. Like, I'm so proud of getting dirty. That's what I do for my job. It's the most incredible thing. And all the other ones were a little more ordinary things. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And I just thought, let's make this the Stinky and Dirty Show. And because those are the two funniest, most interesting, and confident and happy about who they are, and don't care about what anybody thinks of them. That's the duo that should be.
And you think if kids saw a lineup, they would want to be, the stinky one and the dirty one, like in terms of just wish fulfillment to a young kid. Like, how fun is it to get dirty? How fun is it to,
definitely.
It's not I'm getting clean. It's like, no, you're doing the thing you're not supposed to do, right?
Definitely.
Huh.
And even the word stinky is just like
funny.
Kids. The first feedback we got, we would, you do. Part of our job is kids watch the show, and you sort of observe them. And so the first feedback we got, the first question they said to the kids watching the show, they're like, we're going to do a show. We're going to show you a story called The Stinky and Dirty Show. And they just started erupting in laughter there. And they just kept saying, Stinky, Stinky. And they just kept saying that the whole time. They couldn't even watch the show because they were so enamored with this idea that they were watching something that had the word stinky in it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, we made the right choice.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, they wanted to change the name of that show. They thought that parents wouldn't let their kids watch it, and so we went back to the publishers. My agent said, there's a reason that I Stink and I'm Dirty are the best-selling books of all the series, and that sort of changed their mind, and they allowed it to be called the Stinky and Dirty Show.
It wasn't your first time as a head writer, but as a show creator of
creator
an animated show
showrunner.
and
Yeah.
showrunner.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, you're touching every part of the process at that point.
I learned a lot from season 1 to season 2, especially because season 1 I didn't take advantage, and I didn't have a good mentor at the time. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know I should have my hand in more of the stuff that I needed to have my hand in.
At that point, did you even were you familiar with the animation pipeline?
Not
'Cause as a head writer, you're kind of responsible solely for the scripts, and that's as far as you had gone at that point, right?
That's right. I had been I'd done voice records because at Hi Hi Puffy Yumi Yumi, they allowed the writers to come in and be part of that process. And we do little rewrites, but not part of the animatic process or the animation process.
So you didn't know what you didn't know.
I didn't know, and there was nobody there to teach me those things.
It's kind of new for Amazon too, right? It's not like they had
and I think Tara definitely told me that they saw themselves as being sort of the HBO for new creators, like that they want to be that kind of place. And so to her credit, I will always remember that she did this. From season 1 to season 2 of that show, she brought people on in the studio to be mentors. And so Holly Huckins was brought on. She had an overall deal at the studio, and she was brought on to the show. And she was an incredible mentor and showed me a lot about how to be a great showrunner and what being a showrunner, and like to actually embrace that role and really, be in control of the entire process.
Yeah, as you know, I got to work with her not too long ago, and she's amazing.
Yes.
She's incredible.
Yes.
So during that time on Stinky Dirty, how was your confidence? How was, going back to your professor, how was your exerting your arrogance? I mean, what was your collaboration like with the studio?
That was the hardest part. Amazon was great, but they had a definite way of doing things, and it sort of specific educational goals that they wanted to do. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know why we were doing it. A lot of it seemed to go against my instincts. Looking back on it, I realized actually my instincts really fit in very well. It was just a matter of finding how those things came out. So I think my confidence helped make sure that all the whimsical, funny, absurd stuff still came through, but making sure that we're engaging kids. That was sort of a word I learned as part of it. Like, it's not really teaching kids, it's making sure that they stay engaged, that they're interested. And that's what we want. Absolutely, we want them to be interested in what we're doing.
So, I mean, engagement has to come before learning, before teaching, right?
Exactly.
You can't just teach them; they have to be engaged.
Well, the famous quote is like, all television is educational television. The kids are learning something, but they're not learning anything if they're not engaged. So that's the main thing. And I knew that our show was helpful to grown-ups. It's about resourcefulness. It's about trying and failing and trying again.
So what did that show do for your career? Did you feel like when that came out,
I finally made it?
You made it. You broke it. Did you have to start over? How did you navigate what came after that?
That show opened up a lot of doors and sort of changed everything at that point. One thing just going back to the first of all, the fact that it had 2 seasons, and we were going for a 3rd season before the Amazon Kids, the place just crashed. But that show in general, I learned a lot about the animation process, and I learned how to sort of be able to control after scripting how the show continues to get made. And one of the best experiences I worked with Brown Bag Films in Dublin, and I went and visited. And I was going to say this before you had mentioned, what did I learn? Like, that confidence came sort of out of going there and sitting at this long table full of people who all of a sudden were asking me questions. And I was supposed to have the answers to. Like, I was supposed to be the god of this show. And I realized, oh my God, there's nobody else who's going to answer this question, you know? I think the question they had was something about, like, would a convertible have like a brain inside of it? Like, they had this like sort of existential question about how cars exist in Ghost City. And I was like, I don't know, shouldn't you ask like the person who knows this stuff? And I was like, oh my God, I'm the person who knows this stuff. I have to actually answer this question. And I think I said, I don't even remember what I said, but whatever I said, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. We weren't sure about that. They're like, okay, thanks, it's good to know that. And I was like, you're just going to take that? Like, that's actually like, you're just going to believe that? And I realized, you know, people do look to you, and you have to have that arrogance. You have to have that confidence. And actually you do. It's real. You created this show, and you actually have thought through more of the scenarios than anybody else has before you. And so it's important for you to bring that out.
Yeah, because especially that position is filled with, I mean, you're getting those questions all the time. Those little micro questions about, like, you know, what should this be or that be? And if you have some context for it or some reason of why you made certain choices that might not be apparent to them, you can at least draw from that within you. Yeah. And say, oh, it should be like this, or this is what I was thinking. Or
and something I learned about myself also that you figure into this part of the conversation, but is that I think everybody already knows what's in my head. Like, something about myself is like, I think of something, I put it on the page, and then I go, and I expect it to come out exactly the way I saw it in my head. And I get annoyed when somebody comes back and says, I don't get what's happening here, or does it differently. And I'm like, how could you not see what was so clear in my head? And that comes through in so many places. And I don't generally want to talk to people about it. And so, like, it starts with the writing, right? And I just want to point something. This sort of like I came about when you were working with me on Tots. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we break the story, we talk about it, and then the writer goes off and does it. And like, I don't need to see it until it comes back to me. But you would do this thing where you would come to my office. I would come in at 7 a.m. I think I was doing like meetings with Ireland at 5 a.m. And so I'd be in the office at 7 a.m. and you would come in and you'd sit on the couch. And at first I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, just why are you annoying me with questions about the script?
The couch in your office.
The couch in my office.
Yeah.
And then I started to really enjoy it because I realized, oh, it's not, this is that thing where he doesn't see exactly what's in my head. You know, we have to talk it through together. And it has to be in his head, and he has to love it. And then, so you would come away from those meetings, and first of all, you have this great, I'm going to give you a compliment. You have this great optimistic attitude where it's like, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, that's great. I love that. And that feels good to, you know, anybody who's a mentor. That feels great. Like, oh, we're seeing the same thing, and you're feeling it too. It's not just seeing, you're feeling it. And you would walk out of the office, and then what you bring back is something that we both had talked about and felt and understood already. And I was like, I should talk to people more, but I don't do that. So I like it when people kind of force it on me. I like when people come to me and say, I don't understand this, or I need to talk this through with you. And I might show a little annoyance at first, but it's not just the writer. It's like a director or a storyboard artist, or somebody who's doing music or songs, or my wife over there. If I might show a little annoyance at first, but ultimately I'll be very happy that we had that conversation. And I don't have it in me necessarily. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to bite the bullet. We got to talk about this before you set off on it. And I work great with people who want to talk about stuff and sort of push the issue. And it works way better for me because I actually do have a lot in my head that I haven't communicated, you know? And that's what needs to happen. It's the best scenario for me. So that's something I learned about myself.
Now, back then on that show on Tots, that was my first preschool show.
Yeah.
My second show, and I was a script coordinator and doing freelance at the time.
Right.
So I was a new writer. I'd written
Yes.
one script before that. So what now do you look for in new up and coming writers?
Right.
How do you put together a writer's room?
Like the last writer's room, I put together like veterans and people who are also younger, but also like people who connect with the like the show we did, Messi and the Giants, is soccer based. People who love sports, who particularly love soccer, veterans of the writing team, and then people who are younger and more up and coming. I wanted to put together that conglomeration, and also there's a big video game aspect of our show, and so somebody who is like a big gamer, I thought that was a great thing. So putting together that, I generally, maybe I shouldn't say this. You might have to edit this out.
If you want me to, I will.
I generally don't read specs.
You've said that before.
I don't do it.
You have told me that.
Yeah. I rely on word of mouth or having worked with the people before or having a conversation with them. I figure if they've gotten this far, they know how to put words on paper.
You say, why don't you? You said generally don't. So in most cases, why do you opt not to read their sample?
Oh, well, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, I don't think I learn anything better from reading a sample than I do from talking or hearing about that person. And number two, you don't know where a sample's been. Like as story editors, you and I know we've both rewritten people's scripts dozens of times so that the script itself probably doesn't even resemble necessarily what they handed in.
Not an accurate reflection.
Exactly.
You know, you want the pre-story edited, ideally.
And I'm not saying that people, submit those scripts, but how would I know one way or another? That script might be great because some story editor or some showrunner wrote a great script
off of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, which could mean theirs was off, or it could mean that's just the vision of the showrunner.
Exactly.
And so word of mouth, you call the other head writer, a head writer that they've worked with, or someone else to get the take on them.
Exactly. And then something I've always done is the script coordinator. I wish that I had known of the position of script coordinator or writer's room assistant or writer's assistant when I was coming up, because I think it's the best way to understand and learn a show or learn the process of writing.
I do. Something that there's advantages and disadvantages of being mostly remote now, or at least on now our shows are typically, 2 days a week we're in for story breaks, table reads, the other days of the week we're at home.
Yeah.
But to be up and coming and to be with the boss almost every day, like I was with you, just sitting on your couch, annoying you a bit, but also coming away with some wisdom and,
That's right.
All right, I'm going to go over here. It is different. And so I think that time spent observing people and just being a sponge of conversations, or, hey, why don't you listen in on this conversation? I'm going to help this more experienced writer. We're going to talk about this.
Right.
Like, that's just so...
I think it's the most important thing. And also, like, what I found since you and when I hire a script coordinator, they end up
it's happened several times after me.
Yes.
Yeah.
They end up being somebody who becomes a great writer.
Yeah.
And so I do look for somebody who has that potential. And I might read their spec, especially if it's a pilot that hasn't been rewritten or something like that. I don't know if I read yours. I might have.
I don't know if I had anything to share
I think
at that
you had
point.
the one from
Stretch Armstrong, which was a 6 to 11 show.
Yeah.
But I had it.
Fine.
Because,
Yeah.
right. But you know what, though? I find kind of the same is true.
Yeah.
Right? I do place less emphasis on writing samples.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what their voice is. If it's an original, I'll maybe open it and just take a look, and you get that sniff test of like, okay, is the first half a page compelling?
Yeah.
And then right off the bat, right?
Exactly.
Don't you have a rule at some point?
I do. I have a rule.
What's your feedback rule?
My feedback: lots of people send scripts. I'm sure you'll find it being common in the industry. Send me a script. Will you read my script? Will you read my script? Will you read my script? And so my rule is, I'll read the first 10 pages, and then I'll probably get back to you and tell you what's wrong with it. But that's all I'll commit to is the 10 pages. And then that way they'll be like, sometimes people are confused, like, why would you only read 10 pages? Well, if you haven't done it in 10 pages,
Right.
It's not working. You need to fix this
Yeah.
first 10 pages.
Now, just going back on Tots, you were the head writer.
Yes.
And then from there, you went to Hello Jack, the Kindness Show.
Right.
As executive producer.
Right.
And then from there, we did Cocomelon Lane together.
Right.
So across these shows, what is something that you wish more executives understood about writers? And what's something you think more writers ought to understand about executives?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think the most important thing that a writer needs to get from an executive is the feeling that they love the show. I guess I use that word love a lot. Like they love the show too, and that they want it to be great. It doesn't mean like I don't need to hear a compliment sandwich. I don't. I just need some sense that like overall, this is what we're doing is just a great thing.
You can tell when they're creatively in sync with you, even if they're telling you, hey, this didn't quite work, this part.
Exactly.
You could tell, right?
Exactly.
And you need,
And sometimes I don't think, an executive is assigned to the show. They didn't come to this thing because they loved it so much and they have to be part of the show like we are basically, or because you were hired by the showrunner or the creator for some reason, or because you showed enough love. The executive is coming from a completely different place. And so I think there's probably for writers a built-in anxiety about that. Like, what if they don't love my show? Yeah. And there's no course for you to take if they don't. No. You can tell sometimes that the executive doesn't love the show and doesn't love what the creator came up with or what you've come up with as this being something that's so great, or even what was purchased by the network. Somebody who purchased it and says, we want to make this thing, they're not necessarily the person giving notes on it. And so they didn't come at it with the same kind of love.
Oftentimes it's handed off, it's developed and then it's handed off to someone,
which is
a different department,
which is
a little,
crazy.
It's more than a little odd.
And I have to say, there's been many times where I've been in situations where it's clear to me that the executive doesn't have the love for the show that they need to have in order to understand it. And they're giving notes out of fear or out of a completely misguided sense of what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And, you try to be diplomatic and you try to be great about that kind of stuff. But I think that's where your arrogance comes in and that's where your confidence comes in. You have to really push for, otherwise you're stuck in a show that's not going to work both ways.
Right.
And if there are great ideas, then there are great ideas. But seeing that the executive actually likes it, loves it, hopefully, loves your show, that's really important. And I don't always see that from executives. The ones that do, they're the best.
And what about the reverse? What do you wish or think that writers should understand more about executives? Because you said something about not liking the show, but I think a lot of writers make it about themselves too. What if they don't like me?
Oh, yeah. I think that you need to, especially if you're starting, you need to understand where you fit. It's not your show generally when you're starting. So you have to sort of like come around to what's great about it and what you love about it. And if it's executives giving notes and you're a staff writer or you're a freelancer, you need to look to the showrunner and the show creators for guidance on how to push back. That's the person you need to talk to. And if you are angry or if you have like things you don't like about the notes, talk to them about it. And if they're good, then they'll be like, okay, calm down. It's okay. That's not really it doesn't bother me. I know it bothers you and I'll tell you why. It's not a big deal. And they'll be able to talk you down. That's sort of their job. I think that's what should be their job. But then they get to push back against the executive. And people like me, I know how to do it in a way that I'm not alienating somebody. And I've been told by executives, you're very collaborative. I really like the way you work with us as a team.
I think it's also because you articulate why you believe something. It's not just you say it and that's how it is.
Right.
It's, well, here's why I think that.
Yeah.
But something I learned watching you is that sometimes we'd get notes back on a show and maybe there'd be some curveball. Inevitably, you're going to get a curveball where you get a lot of notes.
Yeah.
But I never saw you panic. And it's like the players on the court watch the coach. And if the coach isn't panicking, then the players
Yeah.
don't panic.
Yeah.
And that was something I learned from you, where it's like, well, there's just always a way. And and sometimes it's a phone call or it's a meeting. You talk to the executive and you figure it out, because
Right.
sometimes you could figure out a new way into something that takes care of half of those notes, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the note behind the note.
Yeah.
You know, where's this coming from? But I never saw you panic. And that was just something that I made sure I was conscious of modeling when I was in that position.
That's great.
And
I'm glad you got that from me, because it's not it's what I'm showing, but like I think my natural state is panic.
I think
I think every
on the
writer
inside, it's
probably.
like, yeah, like, oh my God, I mean, we talked about it. Don't look at notes on your phone, because they always,
Definitely.
so we all have those little freakouts inside of us.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but the path forward.
Yeah.
You're going to panic on the path forward, or are you going to try to, and I think that's the part that I've seen, but we all have those internal, like,
Yeah. I mean, I think, panic is, I talk to Jody about this all the time. Like, panic is something I grew up with hating when other people got panicked. It was something that made me stressed because other people were panicked. And so I think I never want to show anybody else that I'm having panic.
huh? Where did that come from?
From my mom. Hi, Mom. I think my mom tended to panic, and I spent a lot of time with my mom growing up in the car.
And you just remember that feeling, and you're like, okay.
I never liked that. I hated it.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe that's why I like Mr. Rogers so much. He's like, never. Can you imagine Mr. Rogers panicking?
No, he's always
never in a million years.
It's a very calming show.
So
right?
there's something about that attitude that's just great.
All the things that you've done in your career, there's always projects, and you alluded to that in your very first script that made it to outline but didn't go to script.
Yeah.
Always things that didn't go through, projects that you developed that don't go forward. How do you stay mentally focused and in the game? How do you keep going? What do you tell yourself in those instances?
I think it's all about volume. I think, when I first started out, I had one script, and that was everything. You think about that, like, that's everything. I wrote a script that I thought was great. It was like the first script I thought, this is great. It would be a great movie. And every time I got a rejection or somebody who said, oh, it's just not for us, I felt like that was a review of my entire life and my entire work as an artist, and that I would never come back from that. And you just start to realize, well, I have a lot of stories to tell, and I have a lot of different ways to fulfill this enjoyment of telling stories, and just put a lot of stories out there. And so when one gets killed now, or somebody just doesn't respond to it, there's so many other things that
You don't feel it as much.
I just don't feel it as much. Exactly.
Right. And at this point in your career, do you feel like you still have to, not audition, but you're still out there hustling?
I think you have to hustle always.
Always.
It did get easier in the last 10 years. Since I did the Stinky and Dirty Show, people tend to have some sort of deference or some sort of idea that I know what I'm doing. And that's nice.
Well, it's hard earned too, right?
Well, yeah. I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's easier to get meetings, but you still always have to hustle. And it's always who, like, I think I've had writers come to me and say, my agent won't get me to talk to the people that they need. I'm like, well, why are you relying on your agent? You have to do it. You have to go find the people to talk to. You have to foster those relationships. And it's something I didn't do early in my career because I wasn't good at it. I was this introvert. I wanted to stay home. I didn't want to talk to anybody. The whole agent idea was a great idea because they'll do all that stuff for you. It doesn't work like that. You really do have to have your own network of people that you've either worked with or that you've always had meetings with and wanted to work with. And those things are really important in getting your next job. And sometimes there are people I'd worked with or had meetings with for years and years and years and years and years, and nothing ever happened. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they'll call me. And you feel like those meetings aren't important, but they are, because you're building those relationships.
Because so much of it is timing and so much of it is out of your control.
Exactly.
You might want to work with someone, or an executive might want to work with you, but if there's nothing there,
exactly,
there's nothing there. So on that note, how has your definition of success changed over time?
When I first thought of success, it's funny, I wrote a script about this. When I first thought of success, it was fame, fortune, seeing my name in lights, winning an Oscar, all of those things. And now, and it happened sort of early on, sort of like when I knew I was going to change the way I lived my life and the way I pursued my career. It's, what do I actually love about all of this? What do I love about this? What do I actually love about this process without the rewards? If I didn't have the rewards of, like you can win an Emmy or you see your name on the screen, like what do I love about this process? And what I love is the storytelling process. I've seen a lot of people say, I get to make up stuff for a living. Like, that is great. That's like an incredible honor and a wonderful thing to be able to do. And so success for me is like, do I get to laugh today because I had this great story meeting with the writers, and we came up with something that we just know is great. That's success right there, right then and there. You should celebrate that, enjoy it, have fun in that moment, because it may not end up showing on screen. It may not ever end up seeing the light of day, but that moment is what we do. If you really think about it, why we're even in this business, that's what it should be about. And then going home and having, seeing your kids, seeing your family, that balance is really important. Don't take that for granted, but being able to go back and forth between those things.
There was an opportunity recently that I was considering asking your advice about. And one of the things you said, because we were both leaning towards this probably isn't the right thing for me, but you had said, this is like months ago.
Yes.
If you do that, think about, I'm paraphrasing, but the stress that you'll bring home to your family.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. I mean, this is your life. It's not just, how you're going to get the next job. This is your life. And so, like I've seen a lot of people who are super successful, people that at one time I was jealous of, people who I worked with or went to school with. And I was like, damn, I wish I had what they had. But I see their lives, and it's not the life I would want. And who knows if I hadn't had that conversation in the car with Jody, if my life would have been something completely different that I know now. I know I wouldn't enjoy that part of my life. Maybe I would be more successful in terms of what the definition of success was back then. I might be. I think I probably would be. But I sort of made that mental choice, that choice in time, and I don't think I've ever felt bad about that ever. I'm just really happy, and that definition of success is those things. Being in the moment. Life. The life is like a journey, right? I don't even remember the quote. I'm quoting something. Somebody quote me on this. Like this idea that life is a journey, but you have to enjoy the journey, not the destination.
This is something I ask every guest. Okay. It's called the rule I break. Every industry has rules.
Yeah.
Some are there for a reason, and some are just begging to be broken. Oh, so what's a rule in your field that you don't follow or believe in?
Well, I mean, number one, like I don't read specs. That's a rule that I guess I break. That's sort of a rule. Yeah, I can't think of. I mean, I like rules in general. Rules are kind of cool because they keep you on a path. Mm-hmm. If you go with your gut, though, which rules just need to be broken just because you're in that moment and you're like, well, that's not going to work for the story. You have to break that rule.
Before we go, I like to do a rapid fire round.
Okay.
What's the last book you read?
Okay, so I read books on the Kindle and I never remember the title. Because, when you have a book, the title's always like sitting there looking at you. But when you're reading a Kindle, you turn it on, it's on the page you left off. So you never see the title of the book. But I am reading right now the latest Stephen King true. He does this like detective series with Holly Gibney. I don't know if you've read them. Very good.
What's a movie you love rewatching?
Raiders of the Lost Ark. I watch it anytime it's on. Like even if I see it flipping through a channel, or even if I see that it's on, I'll just go to it and watch it from any point and be like, "This is incredible. I love this." Spielberg
still that grips you still.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every moment of that movie. There's no bad moment in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This might be a tough one for you. If it wasn't this, what's another career field you could see yourself in?
There is none. There is none. I remember walking. I know I keep bringing up Jody. walking around when we came to LA and we were in that long period of time where I just wasn't finding something, walking around and being like, okay, well, what else is there? And I just remember saying, there is nothing else. I'm just going to keep doing this until, it happens. And that was it. And that was sort of like an important moment too. It was almost just as important. And it's incredible that she was supportive and was able to be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, because that's not necessarily something somebody would think was a good idea.
Yeah, Jody.
And I was down. Like, I wanted out. I wanted out of this thing. This is nothing but heartbreak and horror, and it's making my life miserable. And I wanted out. And then she was like, well, what else would you do? And I couldn't think of anything. So, and I still today. But that makes sense. I mean, like, I knew from when I was a kid that that's all I wanted to do. So
that's funny. That just hearing you reason that out reminds me of the end of Annie Hall, where he's like, talks about love. And he's like, my brother's a chicken. I don't know what to do. He's a chicken. Well, why don't you turn him in? Yeah. Well, I need the eggs. Yeah. So it's like, this industry's making your life miserable. And why are you still here? Well, you need the eggs.
I need the eggs. Definitely.
Worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I remember a mentor of mine who happened to be a woman, didn't like it's the worst piece of advice and the best piece of advice at the same time. It was worse when it happened, but then I used it but we were getting feedback from the network on a show, and the mentor said to me, well, grow a pair. Why don't you grow a pair and fight back? And I was like, so angry. I was like, that's not good advice. You don't tell me to grow a pair. And plus, in today's day and age, that's not cool. You don't say something like that to somebody. And you're challenging my manhood. Like, what is this? What is happening? But of course they were right. I needed to, it didn't need to grow a pair. I just needed to express myself and say what I needed to say, and not just allow what was happening to happen and be overcome by that process. So the
spirit was there.
The spirit was there. It was just the way the advice was given was really bad. But I'll always remember it.
That's the last question was best piece of advice you've ever received.
Grow a pair.
Just delivered in a different way.
Yes. Grow a pair.
Right. Yeah. Whispers. Guy, I am so grateful for you.
Is this it?
Yes.
Are we ending?
Yeah. Just for your time today, but just for being you're so important to me in my life and in my career, and I've really gotten to grow with you, and times that we're not working together, near you, where I come to you for advice, and you've just been so important to me, and I just as a mentor and as a friend, and I'm really grateful to know you and to observe you from afar and to work closely with you, and I hope that there's many more to come.
I know there will be. Absolutely. Now we're going to start all over, and I'm going to interview you. Brandon Violette. Welcome to the Story Series podcast.
Oh, thank you. But before we go, where can people find you or your work?
In my office, on the couch. You could sit there, wait for me. I'll talk to you like I talked to Brandon.
Yes.
No, our Cocomelon Lane. Brandon and I, the show we created.
There's still more
to come out
on
Netflix.
The pipeline, yeah. And when is the new show coming out?
New show comes out in 2027, Messi and the Giants. Okay. You'll probably see some sort of short form over the course of the next year, especially during World Cup. I don't know if you know this. I know you love sports, Brandon. But
I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
By the way, he's probably the most famous man in the world. It's just in America.
Lionel
Messi.
All right.
But the World Cup, which is a soccer tournament, is being played in the United States next year, 2026. And so during that, we're probably going to do a lot of promotion about the show, because the show is obviously very soccer oriented.
That's incredible.
And we'll have some short form that shows then, and then in 2027 we actually release the series. But you'll start to see stuff about it I think that Lionel Messi is probably going to put his weight behind it quite a bit. It's important to him. There's a heart to the series too that really embodies his spirit, which is he's a really great guy. He's been very inspiring to all of us who are soccer fans and just as a man, just as the person that he is and what he brings to the sport and the concept of sport. So I think we're doing him proud, and I think people will see that part of the show too. You don't have to love sports and you don't have to love soccer to love this show.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible. Well, Guy, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Sure. It's a pleasure.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If something in this episode moved you or even made you pause for a second, please consider following the show, leaving a review, and signing up for the weekly newsletter at storyseriesPodcast.com. That's where I share my personal takeaways from each episode, what stuck with me and why, one story at a time. See you in the next one.